I never imagined at 65 I would be fighting for my place in my own home. The house where I raised my son Jake, where I nursed my late husband through cancer. 8 months ago, I opened my doors to Jake and his pregnant wife, Amanda. Yesterday, she cornered me in the kitchen with that smug look on her face. Kelsey, we need to discuss something important. With the baby coming, I need peace and quiet. We think you should find somewhere else to live. Her smirk faded when I said, Honey, this is my house. That beautiful colonial house on Maple Street had been my sanctuary for 40 years. Frank and I bought it when Jake was just a baby himself. We saved every penny for the down payment, painted every room ourselves, and planted each shrub in the garden with our own hands. The big oak tree in the backyard still held the weathered remains of the treehouse Frank built when Jake turned 8. Frank and I had planned to grow old together in this house. We talked about rocking on the porch swing when we turned 80, watching our grandchildren play in the yard. But life rarely follows our carefully laid plans. 3 years ago, Frank complained of stomach pain during our anniversary dinner. 6 weeks later, he was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. I spent 11 months watching my vibrant, funny husband wither away in our bedroom. I became his nurse, his advocate, and finally, his grief-stricken widow at 62. The first year after Frank died, the silence in our 4-bedroom home was deafening. I wandered from room to room, surrounded by 40 years of memories. Friends suggested I downsize, but I couldn't bear to leave the place where Frank's presence still lingered in every corner. Then came the unexpected phone call from Jake last summer. My son had always been the responsible one, a dedicated high school English teacher who married Amanda 4 years ago. Amanda worked in pharmaceutical sales, and from what Jake had told me, she was quite successful. Mom, we have some news, Jake said that evening on the phone. Amanda is pregnant. I felt a surge of joy at the thought of becoming a grandmother. Finally, a reason to smile again. That's wonderful, sweetheart. How is Amanda feeling? Actually, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Our apartment lease is ending next month, and with the baby coming, we've been looking at houses, but the market is insane right now. We're struggling to find something we can afford in a good school district. Before he even asked, I knew what I would offer. My big empty house had too many unused rooms and too much silence. Why don't you both come stay here? You can have the entire upstairs. There's plenty of room for a nursery. Just until you find the right place. Jake hesitated. Are you sure, Mom? Amanda can be particular about her space. Of course I'm sure. This house needs life in it again. 2 weeks later, they arrived with a moving truck. Amanda was 5 months pregnant and glowing. She hugged me briefly, her perfectly manicured nails patting my shoulder. Thank you for this, Kelsey. It's so generous, she said, though her eyes were already scanning the living room, mentally redecorating. The first month went smoothly. I helped clear out the small bedroom adjacent to Jake's old room for the nursery. We painted the walls a soft green and assembled the white crib Jake had ordered online. Amanda arranged and rearranged the furniture, insisting the crib needed to be positioned just so for proper energy flow. I noticed small changes around the house. The framed photos of Jake's childhood that had lined the hallway were replaced with modern art prints. Frank's favorite recliner, the worn leather one I still curled up in some nights when I missed him most, disappeared one day while I was at my book club. Where's the recliner? I asked when I returned home. Amanda smiled brightly. It was taking up so much space in the living room, and it didn't match the new rug we ordered. Jake moved it to the garage. I swallowed my objection. They needed space for their new family. I could be flexible, but the changes continued. I came home from church one Sunday to find my kitchen completely reorganized. 40 years of knowing exactly where every spatula and mixing bowl belonged, gone in an afternoon. I hope you don't mind, Amanda said when she saw my face. I just think this arrangement is much more efficient. The baby books say organizing now will make life easier when the little one arrives. I nodded and said nothing. Peace was worth the small adjustments. Then came the Saturday I returned from my weekly grocery shopping to find a yard sale in full swing on my front lawn. My heart stopped when I spotted Frank's vinyl collection being picked over by strangers. Those records had been his pride and joy. lovingly collected since his college days. I abandoned my grocery bags on the sidewalk and rushed over. A teenage boy was counting out $20 for Frank's prized first-pressing Beatles album. "I'm sorry, that's not for sale," I said, reaching for the record. Amanda stepped between us. "Actually, it is. We already agreed on the price." I stood there, unable to speak, as the boy walked away with a piece of Frank I could never get back. "How could you?" I finally managed to ask once the customer was gone. "Those were Frank's. You know how much they meant to him. To me." Amanda's smile never wavered. "Kelsey, they were just taking up space in the den. We need to make room for the baby's playpen and swing. Besides, isn't it unhealthy to cling to possessions from the past? My therapist says we need to make space for new memories." I looked to Jake for support, but he just shrugged uncomfortably. "Mom, we need to make room for the baby's things," he said. Those records were just gathering dust. That night, I cried in my bedroom, the one space that remained untouched by Amanda's improvements. It was then I realized I was being systematically erased from my own home, one cherished memory at a time. 3 weeks before her due date, I was awakened at 2 a.m. by Jake pounding on my bedroom door. "Mom! Amanda's water broke!" I threw on clothes and grabbed my purse. Jake was a nervous wreck, his hands shaking too much to drive, so I took the wheel. Amanda sat in the back seat, timing her contractions with an app on her phone. 6 minutes apart, she announced, surprisingly calm. "The hospital is 12 minutes away. We should make it in time." I drove carefully but quickly through the empty streets, my heart racing with both worry and excitement. The labor lasted 12 hours. I spent most of it in the waiting room, texting updates to Amanda's parents, Barbara and William, who were flying in from Portland. The hospital's COVID restrictions limited visitors in the delivery room, and Amanda had chosen her sister to be her support person alongside Jake. Finally, Jake emerged, his face a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. "It's a boy," he announced. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Samuel Franklin. We're calling him Sam. I burst into tears at the middle name. Franklin, for Frank. Despite everything, they had honored my late husband. "Can I see them?" I asked. "Just for a few minutes." Amanda's pretty tired. She looked beautiful despite her exhaustion, cradling tiny Sam against her chest. When she allowed me to hold him, I felt a rush of love so powerful it took my breath away. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I saw Frank's nose and Jake's chin in his perfect little face. "He's beautiful," I whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "My mom and dad will be here tomorrow," Amanda said, taking him back after only a moment. "They're staying for 2 weeks to help out." I met Barbara and William at the airport the next day. They were a matching set of Portland chic in expensive outdoor wear, wheat-colored hair, and identical cool expressions. Barbara hugged me briefly, air kissing near my cheek. "So good of you to pick us up, Kelsey," she said. "And so generous of you to open your home to the kids during this transition time." Something in her tone made me feel like a temporary innkeeper rather than Sam's grandmother. I had prepared the guest room with fresh linens and flowers, but when they arrived, Barbara surveyed the room with a critical eye. "The bed seems a bit firm," she commented. "William has back issues. Do you have a memory foam topper?" I didn't, and found myself apologizing for my inadequate guest accommodations in my own home. When Jake and Amanda brought Sam home 3 days later, the real adjustment began. I was thrilled to help with middle-of-the-night feedings so the new parents could rest. Sam and I developed a special bond during those quiet 3 a.m. moments when I would rock him in the nursery, singing the same lullabies I once sang to Jake. For the first 2 weeks, I was indispensable. I cooked, cleaned, did laundry, and cared for Sam, while Jake and Amanda recovered from the exhaustion of early parenthood. Barbara and William stayed for their planned 2 weeks, but seemed to spend more time critiquing my home than helping with the baby. "This kitchen really needs updating," Barbara remarked one morning as I prepared breakfast. "Those cabinets must be 30 years old." 35. I corrected with forced cheerfulness. Frank and I installed them ourselves. Well, if you ever decide to sell, you'll need to renovate. No one wants these dated oak cabinets anymore. The comment struck me as odd. Why would she be thinking about me selling my house? After Barbara and William returned to Portland, I noticed a shift in Amanda's attitude. As she grew more confident with Sam, she became increasingly critical of my baby care. "You're holding him wrong," she snapped one afternoon. "Support his head like this." I had raised a healthy son and had been holding Sam successfully for weeks, but I adjusted my technique without comment. Then came the rules. Written instructions posted on the refrigerator about how to interact with Sam, when to feed him, how to feed him, what words to use when speaking to him, what songs were appropriate to sing. One evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone with her mother. "She's constantly hovering," Amanda complained. "Sam is my baby, but she acts like she has equal rights to him." "No, I've tried telling Jake, but he just says she's being helpful." A pause. "Maybe you're right. Maybe we need to be more direct about boundaries." The next day, Amanda accused me of almost dropping Sam during his feeding. I turned around and his head was falling backward, she told Jake when he came home from work. "If I hadn't been watching, he could have been seriously hurt." It never happened. I would have sooner cut off my own arm than risk harm to my grandson. But Jake believed his wife. "Mom, you need to be more careful," he said. His voice gentle but his eyes troubled. "Babies are fragile." "Jake, that's not what happened," I tried to explain. "I've never once been careless with Sam." "Amanda saw it, Mom. Just, please be more careful." The fabricated incident became Amanda's justification for new restrictions. I was no longer allowed to feed Sam unless Amanda was present. No more solo babysitting, no more precious night feedings. Jake started working longer hours, grading papers at school rather than bringing them home. He avoided the growing tension between his wife and mother, leaving me increasingly isolated in my own home. One night, I found him alone in the kitchen and tried to talk to him. "Jake, honey, I feel like I'm being pushed out of Sam's life." He sighed, looking older than his 34 years. "Mom, Amanda is under a lot of pressure as a new mom. She's just being protective. It'll get better." But it didn't get better. It got worse. By the time Sam was 3 months old, my home had become a minefield of restrictions. Amanda created a laminated list of house rules that appeared on the refrigerator one morning. Baby quiet hours, 8 am 8 p.m. No vacuum, laundry, TV, or music during these times. Kitchen schedule, 6-7 a.m., 1-1 m, 1-2 p.m., 5-6 p.m. Please limit cooking to these hours. Visitors must be approved 48 hours in advance. The rules multiplied weekly, always with Sam's well-being as the justification. I found myself tiptoeing around my own house, afraid to make any noise that might incur Amanda's disapproval. When I made my traditional Sunday pot roast, a recipe Frank had loved, Amanda complained about the smell. "These strong cooking odors could irritate Sam's sensitive system," she said, opening all the windows despite the November chill. "Maybe you could stick to milder foods." I began taking my meals in my bedroom to avoid conflict. Sometimes I would wait until they were asleep to heat up soup in the microwave, eating quietly at the kitchen counter in the dark. Amanda's friends started visiting regularly, young mothers with their own babies for playdate practice, though the infants mostly slept through these gatherings. The women took over the living room, spreading their designer diaper bags across my furniture, leaving coffee cups and crumbs everywhere. Once, while bringing in mail, I overheard them discussing me. "How long is your mother-in-law planning to stay?" a blonde woman asked Amanda. I froze in the hallway, confused. "Stay? This was my home," Amanda sighed dramatically. "We're working on a solution to the mother-in-law problem. Jake understands she's becoming an obstacle to our family bonding." They spoke about me as if I were a piece of furniture they needed to dispose of. An inconvenience, an obstacle. My church friend Judy noticed something was wrong during our weekly coffee date. "You seem down, Kelsey. Is everything okay with the new grandbaby?" I considered confiding in her, but found myself minimizing the situation. Oh, you know how it is with new parents. They need their space. You're giving them space in your own home, Judy pointed out. Remember, it's still your house. Was it, though? Every day, another piece of my home transformed without my input. The curtains my mother had sewn disappeared, replaced by modern blinds. The hallway wallpaper Frank and I had carefully selected was painted over while I visited my sister for a weekend. Jake became a ghost in the house, leaving early for work and returning after dinner. He avoided being alone with me, as if afraid of what I might say. My son, who once told me everything, now barely made eye contact. To give them the space Amanda constantly talked about, I started taking long walks around the neighborhood. Even in the January cold, I would bundle up and leave the house for hours, visiting the library or sitting in the mall food court, nursing a single cup of coffee until I felt I could return home without being in the way. One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected due to a sudden rainstorm. The house was quiet, and I assumed Amanda was napping with Sam. As I hung my wet coat in the hallway closet, I noticed a brochure that had fallen to the floor. Golden Sunset Retirement Community, the glossy pamphlet proclaimed. Independent living for active seniors. Someone had circled several floor plans and made notes about pricing. In Amanda's handwriting, I saw, monthly fee includes meals. Could work with Kay's budget after house sale? My hands trembled as I replaced the brochure and quietly went to my room. They weren't just trying to push me out of their daily lives. They were trying to push me out of my home entirely. That night, I confronted Jake when he finally came home. I found the retirement home brochure, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Were you planning to discuss this with me? Or just present it as a done deal? Jake had the decency to look ashamed. Mom, it's not like that. We're just exploring options. For the future. My future? In my house? He ran his hands through his hair. Look, with Sam growing up, we need more space. And that house is so big for just one person. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere with people your own age? With activities and meals provided? This is my home, Jake. Your father and I worked our entire lives to pay for it. We raised you here. All my memories of Frank are here. I know, Mom, but sometimes we need to move forward. Think about it, okay? A few days later, I borrowed Amanda's laptop when she asked me to look up a pediatrician's phone number. After finding the information, I noticed an open tab for real estate listings. Houses in my neighborhood, in my price range. Another tab showed an email exchange with a real estate agent discussing market analysis for 412 Maple Street, my address. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, looking out at the yard where Frank and I had planted tulip bulbs every fall, where Jake had learned to ride his bike, where I had imagined my grandchildren would play someday. They weren't just planning to move me out. They were planning to take my house. The next morning, I called my old friend Martha. Unlike my other friends, who knew Jake and might inadvertently mention our conversation, Martha had moved to our town after Jake left for college. She had no connection to my son but had become one of my closest confidants after Frank died. I need to talk to someone I can trust, I told her. Can we meet somewhere private? 2 days after I discovered the real estate listings, Amanda announced that her parents were coming for another visit. Mom and Dad want to see how much Sam has grown, she said at breakfast. They'll be staying for 2 weeks. I nodded, pushing my oatmeal around the bowl. In the 6 months since Sam's birth, Barbara and William had visited 3 times, each visit bringing a new wave of critiques about my home and parenting advice I hadn't asked for. Of course, I said. The guest room is ready. Amanda cleared her throat. Actually, we thought they could have the master bedroom this time. It has the attached bathroom, which would give them more privacy. My bedroom, the one space in the house that remained mine. The room I had shared with Frank for 38 years. I see, I said, my voice tight. And where would I sleep? We already set up the small guest room for you. It's cozy, and you'll have more distance from Sam's nighttime noises. I wanted to protest, but the confrontation would only create more tension. Slowly, I nodded. When I returned from church that Sunday, Barbara and William had already arrived. My personal belongings had been moved to the smallest bedroom at the end of the hall, the one we had used for storage because the ceiling sloped so sharply you couldn't stand upright in half the room. My clothes hung in the narrow closet, and someone had placed my hairbrush and toothbrush in the hallway bathroom, now designated as mine with a handwritten label on the door. At dinner that evening, the atmosphere felt strange, as if everyone but me was in on a secret. Amanda kept exchanging glances with her parents. Jake studied his plate. Even Sam, now able to sit in his high chair, seemed to sense the tension, banging his spoon more aggressively than usual. After the dishes were cleared, Amanda clasped her hands on the table. "Kelsey, we wanted to talk to you about something important." As a family, her tone was rehearsed, the same voice she probably used in pharmaceutical sales pitches. William and Barbara nodded encouragingly. "Now that Sam is 6 months old, we've been discussing our living situation," Amanda continued. "As he becomes more active, he needs space to develop and explore. And as new parents, we need an environment that supports our parenting philosophy." I waited, my stomach nodding. "The thing is," Amanda said, her voice softening artificially, "with all of us in the house, it's becoming crowded, and the constant presence of another adult creates stress that isn't healthy for a baby's development." Barbara nodded vigorously. "Studies show that new parents need their own space to bond properly with an infant." "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew. Amanda reached out to touch my hand. I pulled back before she could. "We think it would be best for everyone if you considered moving to a senior community, like Golden Sunset. We toured it last week, and it's lovely. They have activities, meals included, and you'd be surrounded by people your own age." "You toured it," I repeated, "without telling me." "We wanted to make sure it was nice enough for you," William interjected. "Very upscale place." "And what about my house?" I asked, looking directly at Jake, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well," Amanda said, her voice saccharine sweet, "we thought we could take over the mortgage payments, or maybe even buy it from you, which would give you a nice nest egg for your new place. The housing market is very strong right now," William added. "You could get a good price." The audacity stunned me. They had planned it all. Move me out, take over my home, erase any trace of my existence. "And if I don't want to leave my own home?" I asked. Amanda's expression hardened slightly. "Kelsey, I need peace and quiet for myself and the baby. Sam is at a critical developmental stage. Multiple caregivers and conflicting routines are confusing for him. Not to mention," Barbara added, "this house is quite large for a woman your age to maintain. The stairs, the yard work. I manage just fine," I said. "For now," William said with a condescending smile. "But thinking ahead, wouldn't you rather be somewhere with support before you need it, rather than after a fall or health crisis?" They were talking about me as if I were decrepit, 1 foot in the grave at 65. I'd been climbing these stairs for 40 years, maintaining this yard, running this household. "I appreciate your concern," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "But I have no intention of leaving my home." Amanda's practiced smile faltered. "Kelsey, I don't think you understand. For Sam's well-being—" "No, Amanda, I don't think you understand." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is my house. My name is on the deed. My husband and I paid off the mortgage 15 years ago. I welcomed you into my home when you needed help. And this is how you repay that kindness? By trying to push me out?" The room fell silent. Even Sam stopped banging his spoon. "Honey," I said, leaning forward, "this is my house, and I'm not going anywhere." Amanda's smirk faded. She clearly hadn't expected resistance. In her mind, I was already gone, just a detail to be managed. "Kelsey," Barbara started, "there's no need to be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm stating facts. This house belongs to me. Not to Jake. Not to Amanda. To me." "Mom," Jake finally spoke, his voice pleading, "we just want what's best for everyone." "No," I said, looking at my son with disappointment. You want what's easiest for yourselves. And you've decided that what's easiest is to push me out of my own home rather than learn to live together respectfully. I turned and walked out of the dining room, hearing Barbara's offended whisper, "Well, I never. So selfish. Older people can be so resistant to change." In my temporary bedroom, I opened my laptop and searched through my email for a specific message. 3 years ago, after Frank died, I had scanned all our important documents: property deed, will, insurance policies. Everything was backed up to the cloud, just as Jake had taught me. The deed to the house was clear: Franklin and Kelsey Sanders, joint tenants with right of survivorship. After Frank's death, the house became solely mine. My hands trembled as I forwarded these documents to my own email, suddenly afraid they might disappear from my computer. Then I called Martha. "I need to see that lawyer friend of your daughter's," I said when she answered. "As soon as possible." The next morning, I woke early and went down to the kitchen before anyone else was awake. I needed coffee and quiet to think about my next steps. To my surprise, I found Jake sitting alone at the table, staring into a mug of cold coffee. "You're up early," I said, keeping my voice neutral as I started the coffee maker. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. We sat in silence as the coffee brewed. Finally, Jake spoke. "I never wanted it to be like this, Mom. It just got away from me." "What got away from you, Jake? The plot to take my house? The decision to send me to a retirement home without my consent? Or just your backbone?" He winced. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Jake. I welcomed you both when you needed help. I've tried to be respectful of your space, your rules, your parenting choices. I've watched as piece by piece, my home has been taken over, my possessions discarded, my memories erased. And now you want me gone completely." "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said. "Amanda just thought, we thought, it would be better for everyone." Better for everyone? Or just better for Amanda? I poured my coffee, keeping my back to him so he wouldn't see my tears. "You know what hurts the most? Not that she wants me gone, but that you would allow it." Before he could respond, Amanda entered the kitchen, already dressed in yoga pants and a matching top. She looked between us suspiciously. "Everything okay?" she asked, her tone falsely bright. "Fine," Jake mumbled. "Just having coffee with my son," I said. "In my kitchen. In my house." Amanda's lips thinned. "Kelsey, about last night, I think we got off on the wrong foot. We're only suggesting Golden Sunset because we care about your well-being. Save the sales pitch, Amanda. I'm not buying." Her facade of pleasantness dropped. "This situation isn't working for us anymore. Sam needs stability and consistency. Then perhaps you should find your own home, where you can establish whatever rules you want. This house has been stable and consistent for 40 years before you arrived." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Jake, are you going to let her speak to me this way?" Jake stared into his coffee mug. "Let's not do this now." "Yes, let's not," I agreed, heading for the door. "I have an appointment to keep." As I left, I heard Amanda's angry whisper. "You need to handle this, Jake. I mean it. I can't live like this anymore." I spent the morning with Martha and her son-in-law, Thomas Parker, who specialized in elder law. I explained the situation in detail, showing him copies of my deed and Frank's will. "Legally, your position is unassailable," Thomas assured me. "The house is yours. They have no claim to it whatsoever." "Can they force me into a retirement home?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "Absolutely not. Not without a court finding you mentally incompetent, which you clearly are not. And even then, as long as you have designated someone other than Jake as your power of attorney, they couldn't touch your assets." I realized with a chill that I had named Jake as my power of attorney after Frank died. Thomas helped me file paperwork to change this immediately, naming Martha instead. "What about my rights with my grandson?" I asked. "If I assert my property rights, I'm afraid they'll keep Sam from me." Thomas explained grandparent rights in our state and helped draft a clear letter establishing boundaries while asserting my legal ownership of the house. When I returned home that afternoon, I found the house empty except for Barbara and William, who were in the kitchen examining my china cabinet. These pieces must have some value, William was saying. Depression glass, isn't it? My mother's, I said from the doorway, making them both jump. Passed down through 3 generations. Where is everyone? Amanda took the baby to her mommy and me class, Barbara said stiffly. Jake's at work. I see. And you're evaluating my possessions because… William had the grace to look embarrassed, but Barbara just lifted her chin. Amanda asked us to look around for items that could be packed up to create more space. This cabinet takes up a lot of room that could be used for Sam's play area. I set my purse down on the counter. Barbara, William, let me be very clear. Nothing in this house will be packed up without my permission. I met with my lawyer this morning. He's drawing up a formal letter outlining my rights as the sole owner of this property. Their expressions would have been comical under different circumstances. Lawyer? Barbara sputtered. That's hardly necessary. We're family. Family doesn't try to push someone out of their own home. Family doesn't make plans to sell a house they don't own. Family respects boundaries and communicates honestly. William attempted damage control. Now, Kelsey, no one's trying to push you out. We're just concerned about practical arrangements for everyone's benefit. My benefit is living in my own home, surrounded by my own possessions and memories. If the current living arrangement doesn't work for Jake and Amanda, they are welcome to find their own place. But they can't afford, Barbara began, then stopped herself. Can't afford what? A house like this? In this neighborhood? That's why you want mine, isn't it? It's not about my welfare or Sam's development. It's about getting a valuable property for a fraction of its market value. They had no answer for that. I left them standing in the kitchen and went to my temporary bedroom to pack a bag. I needed a few days of peace to think clearly, and Martha had offered her guest room. As I was packing, my phone pinged with an email notification. Curious, I opened it to find a draft message in my account that I hadn't written. It was addressed to Jake but hadn't been sent. Jake, I've been thinking about our conversation regarding your mother. I've noticed several concerning signs that might indicate early cognitive decline. She frequently misplaces things, though she blames me for moving them. She becomes disoriented about time, arriving home hours after she says she will. She shows poor judgment, nearly dropping Sam. Perhaps we should speak with her doctor about documenting these concerns. If necessary, we may need to consider guardianship options to protect her assets and ensure she gets appropriate care. My blood ran cold. The email had been drafted in my account, but the writing style was unmistakably Amanda's. She had accessed my email without permission and was fabricating evidence of mental decline. This was no longer just about wanting my house. This was a calculated attempt to have me declared incompetent so they could take control of all my assets. I took photos of the draft email with my phone, then deleted it from my account. Immediately, I changed my email password and logged out. Then I checked my other accounts, banking, investments, social media, and changed those passwords too. When I heard Amanda return with Sam, I took my overnight bag and went downstairs. She was settling him into his playpen in the living room. I'm staying with a friend for a few days, I announced. I think we all need some space to consider our positions. Amanda looked surprised, then slightly panicked. You're leaving? Just like that? What about Sam? I'm sure you can manage without my interference. After all, isn't that what you've been working toward? A house without me in it? Kelsey, you're overreacting. We simply suggested an arrangement that would benefit everyone. Benefit everyone? Or just you? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I found the email draft, Amanda. The one where you're building a case to have me declared incompetent. Accessing my private email is not just immoral, it may be illegal. My lawyer will be very interested to know about this. Her face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about. I have photos and witnesses who can testify to my mental competence. If you try to pursue this path, I will fight you with everything I have. For the first time since I'd known her, Amanda looked frightened. Good. She should be. I'll be back in 3 days, I said. I suggest you use that time to reconsider your position, and when I return, I expect to sleep in my own bedroom. As I walked out, I heard Sam begin to cry. Despite everything, my heart ached to turn around, to comfort my grandson. But I kept walking. Sometimes loving someone means standing firm. Martha's guest room was small, but peaceful. For the first time in months, I slept soundly, without listening for Sam's cries or Amanda's footsteps. My friend was the perfect hostess, providing comfort without prying. She understood I needed time to think. "You can stay as long as you need," she assured me over morning coffee. "But I think you're right to go back. It's your home. Don't let them push you out, even temporarily." Thomas called on my second day away. "I've prepared the letters we discussed," he said. "One, establishing your clear ownership of the property and your expectations going forward, and another addressing potential grandparent rights should they attempt to restrict your access to Sam. Do you think it will come to that?" I asked, my heart aching at the thought. "It's just a precaution. Sometimes having legal documentation prevents these situations from escalating. People behave better when they know there are consequences." I authorized him to deliver the letters by certified mail, ensuring they would arrive the day before I planned to return home. Then I spent my final evening at Martha's preparing mentally for whatever might await me. Martha's daughter Lucy joined us for dinner, bringing her expertise as a family counselor to our conversation. "Set clear boundaries and stick to them," Lucy advised. "Document everything. If they move your things, take photos. If they make threats about Sam, record the conversation if legal in your state. Keep a detailed journal of all interactions." "I hate thinking of my relationship with my son in such adversarial terms," I admitted. Lucy nodded sympathetically. "It's not about being adversaries. It's about protecting yourself while leaving the door open for reconciliation. Jake is caught between his wife and his mother. He's made poor choices, but he may come around when he sees you standing firm." The next morning, I packed my bag and headed home. When I turned onto Maple Street, I was startled to see a moving truck in my driveway. For a moment, I thought perhaps Jake and Amanda had decided to move out. But as I parked and approached the house, I realized the truth was far worse. Movers were carrying boxes out of the house. Boxes labeled Kelsey's room and Kelsey's books. Amanda stood on the porch directing traffic, while Barbara and William helped sort items on the lawn. "What is going on here?" I demanded, climbing the steps. Amanda jumped, clearly not expecting me. "Kelsey, you're back early. We thought you were returning tomorrow." "Clearly," I said coldly. "What are you doing with my belongings?" "We're just organizing," she stammered, "making things more efficient." William stepped forward. "Kelsey, be reasonable. We found a lovely apartment at Golden Sunset. First floor, garden view. We've paid the first month's rent as a gift to you." "You've what?" I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "It's all arranged," Barbara added. "The moving company will take your things directly there. They're very experienced with senior relocations." "Did you receive the letters from my attorney?" I asked Amanda. Her tight smile answered before she spoke. "Yes, and frankly, we think you're being ridiculous. All this legal posturing when we're trying to help you." "Help me?" I gestured to the movers carrying my possessions. "By removing me from my home without my consent? That's not help. That's elder abuse." At that word, the nearest mover paused, looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am?" he asked me. "Is this your property being moved?" "Yes," I confirmed. "And I have not authorized this move. In fact, I explicitly forbid it." The man set down the box he was carrying and signaled to his colleagues. "We can't continue without the property owner's consent. Company policy." "I'm the one who hired you," Amanda protested. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the mover said firmly. "But if there's a dispute about ownership of these items, we have to stop work until it's resolved. I don't want to get in the middle of a family situation." The moving crew began returning boxes to the house, ignoring Amanda's increasingly frantic objections. William tried to salvage the situation. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss this inside, like civilized people." The misunderstanding, I said clearly, is that you believe you have any right to make decisions about my home or my possessions. You don't. Our confrontation had drawn attention. Neighbors had emerged from their houses, watching the drama unfold. Mrs. Peterson from across the street approached cautiously. Kelsey? Is everything all right? Do you need help? Before I could answer, Thomas's car pulled up. He stepped out, briefcase in hand, looking every inch the formidable attorney in his tailored suit. Mrs. Sanders, he called. I came as soon as I got your message. I hadn't sent any message, but I wasn't about to correct him. Perfect timing, Thomas, I said. These people were attempting to remove my possessions without permission. Thomas strode up the walkway, his expression stern. Is that so? I believe the letters I delivered yesterday made the legal situation quite clear. Amanda's confident facade crumbled further. She looked to her parents, who suddenly seemed less certain themselves. Perhaps we should continue this discussion inside, William suggested again, eyeing the gathering neighbors. I think that's wise, Thomas agreed. Mrs. Sanders, shall we? Inside, the house was in chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture moved, closets emptied. The sight of my dismantled life brought tears to my eyes, but I blinked them away. This was no time for weakness. Jake emerged from upstairs, his face falling when he saw me. Mom, you're back. Yes, Jake, I'm back, and I find you packing up my life without my permission. It wasn't my idea, he said weakly. But you allowed it, I pointed out. Just as you've allowed everything else. Thomas took charge of the situation, directing everyone to the living room. He introduced himself formally, though I knew Amanda and her parents had already received his letters. Let me be absolutely clear, he said once everyone was seated. Mrs. Sanders is the sole legal owner of this property. She has not consented to any removal of her belongings. She has not agreed to relocate to any retirement community. Any attempt to remove her or her possessions without explicit written consent could result in civil and potentially criminal charges. Barbara gasped at the word criminal. Furthermore, Thomas continued, the unauthorized access of Mrs. Sanders' email account and the apparent attempt to build a fraudulent case regarding her mental capacity could constitute several criminal offenses, including identity theft, fraud, and elder abuse. That's absurd, Amanda protested. I have documented evidence, I interrupted. Screenshots of the draft, email, timestamps, everything. Do you really want to pursue that line of defense? Amanda fell silent. Thomas placed a folder on the coffee table. I've prepared several documents. First, a formal notification that Mrs. Sanders is exercising her rights as property owner. Second, a cease and desist regarding any attempts to remove her possessions. Third, a proposed rental agreement. Rental agreement? Jake asked, confused. Yes. Thomas nodded. Mrs. Sanders is willing to allow you and your family to remain in her home under specific conditions, including a monthly rental payment of $1,200, which is well below market rate for a property of this size in this neighborhood. You expect us to pay rent? Amanda looked incredulous. After everything we've done to help around here? Help? I couldn't contain my bitter laugh. Is that what you call it? Selling my husband's possessions without permission? Redecorating my home without consultation? Plotting to have me declared incompetent so you could take control of my assets? That kind of help I can do without. The room fell silent. Even Barbara and William looked uncomfortable now. The rental agreement is generous, Thomas continued. It includes continued use of 3 bedrooms and shared common spaces, with clear stipulations about respecting Mrs. Sanders' property and privacy. Alternatively, you are free to find other accommodation. You can't just change the rules like this, Amanda protested. We moved in with the understanding. The understanding, I interrupted, was that you would stay temporarily until you found your own place. That was 8 months ago. Since then, you've systematically tried to take over my home and push me out. Those circumstances change everything. Jake finally spoke up. What about Sam? Are you using our son as leverage? The question hurt more than anything else had. I would never use Sam as leverage, Jake. You know how much I love him. That's why there's nothing in these agreements about my access to my grandson. I'm trusting that as his parents, you'll make the right decisions about his relationship with his grandmother. But if you choose to weaponize him to punish me for standing up for myself, Thomas has prepared documents regarding grandparent rights as well. Jake looked ashamed. I would never keep Sam from you, Mom. Never. Then we have a foundation to build on, I said, my voice softening slightly. Because despite everything, Jake, you're still my son, and I still love you. I just won't allow myself to be erased from my own life. Barbara stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. William, we're not staying to be treated this way. Amanda, Jake, you can come stay with us in Portland until this blows over. Amanda looked torn. The prospect of escaping to her parents' home clearly appealed to her, but it would mean admitting defeat. You have 24 hours to decide, Thomas said calmly. Either sign the rental agreement and abide by its terms, or make arrangements to move out within 30 days. Mrs. Sanders has been more than generous given the circumstances. After Thomas left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the house. Barbara and William retreated to the guest room to pack, having decided to cut their visit short. Amanda locked herself in the nursery with Sam. Jake sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. I began the process of reclaiming my bedroom, moving my belongings back where they belonged. As I hung my clothes in my closet, Jake appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry, Mom, he said quietly. I never meant for things to get so out of hand. I continued my task without looking at him. But you let them get out of hand, Jake. You stood by while your wife dismantled my life piece by piece. I was trying to keep the peace. For Sam's sake, peace at any price isn't peace at all. It's surrender. I finally turned to face him. You allowed Amanda to bully me in my own home because it was easier than standing up to her. He had no defense, and we both knew it. What happens now? He asked. That depends on you and Amanda. I've made my position clear. Jake nodded slowly. I'll talk to her. Try to make her understand. It's not just about understanding, Jake. It's about respect. Basic human respect. After he left, I sat on my bed, my own bed, in my own room, and allowed myself to cry for the first time since this ordeal began. Tears for the broken trust, for the son who had failed to protect me, for the grandmother relationship that might never be what I'd dreamed. But they were also tears of relief. For the first time in months, I had stood my ground. I had refused to be erased. The next morning, Barbara and William departed for the airport in a flurry of disapproving glances and thinly veiled insults about my stubbornness. I maintained a polite facade, even offering to drive them, which they declined in favor of a taxi. This isn't over, Kelsey, Barbara whispered as she hugged me stiffly for the benefit of the watching neighbors. Amanda is very upset. I'm sure she is, I replied calmly. People often get upset when their plans to take advantage of others fall through. After they left, the house fell into an uneasy silence. Amanda remained in the nursery with Sam most of the day. Jake went to school, claiming he had papers to grade, though I suspected he simply wanted to escape the tension. I spent the day restoring order to my home, returning displaced items to their proper places, and taking inventory of what was missing. Frank's records were gone forever, sold to strangers at that yard sale. Some of my mother's china had been packed away. Fortunately, I found the boxes in the garage before they could disappear. That evening, Jake and Amanda came downstairs after putting Sam to bed. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, their expressions solemn. We've discussed the situation, Jake began. And we've decided to sign the rental agreement. I nodded, keeping my face neutral despite my surprise. I had expected more resistance. Thank you for being reasonable, I said. Amanda stared at the table, clearly unhappy but resigned. We can't afford to move right now. The rental market is impossible, and we're still saving for a down payment. I understand. The terms are fair, and well below market value for this neighborhood. There's one thing we'd like to add, Jake said. A timeline. We don't want this to be open-ended. We'd like to set a target of 6 months to find our own place. That seems reasonable, I agreed. I'll have Thomas add it to the agreement. Amanda finally looked up. And we want some guidelines about interaction. Boundaries for everyone to respect, such as privacy in our rooms, scheduled kitchen and laundry times that work for everyone, agreement about guests and noise levels. She took a deep breath. And understanding about Sam. We're his parents, and we make the decisions about his care. I've never disputed that, I said. But as his grandmother, I expect to have a relationship with him, not supervised visits as if I'm some kind of threat. Jake reached for Amanda's hand. We know you love Sam, Mom, and he should know his grandmother. We just need to find a balance that works for everyone. Balance requires give and take on all sides, I pointed out. Not just me giving and you taking. Amanda's lips thinned, but she nodded. We understand that now. We spent the next hour negotiating terms we all could live with. Kitchen access would be shared, with each of us responsible for cleaning up after ourselves. Laundry would be scheduled to accommodate everyone's needs. Common areas would be respected as shared spaces, with major changes requiring consensus. Most importantly, I would have regular time with Sam, including some one-on-one grandmother time as he got older. The next day, Thomas drew up the revised agreement, which we all signed. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a framework we could build on. To help maintain my independence, I installed a lock on my bedroom door. Not because I expected them to enter without permission, but as a symbolic boundary. This space was mine, inviolable. I also began keeping a detailed journal of all interactions and incidents. Lucy had recommended this as a way to document any future issues, but I found it therapeutic as well. Writing about my feelings helped process them in a healthy way. Nancy, Frank's sister, came to stay for a week, providing moral support and an additional witness to the new household dynamics. Her presence eased the tension somewhat, as Amanda was on her best behavior with an outside observer. You're doing the right thing, standing your ground, Nancy assured me over coffee one morning while the others were out. Frank would be proud. He always said you were stronger than you knew. I also joined a support group for seniors facing family conflicts. The stories I heard there made me realize I wasn't alone. Many others were dealing with adult children who viewed them as inconveniences, or, worse, as resources to be exploited. Together, we shared strategies for maintaining our dignity and independence. 3 weeks after we signed the agreement, things had settled into an uneasy truce. Amanda was rigidly polite. Jake was trying too hard to please everyone, and I was cautiously optimistic that we could make this work until they found their own place. Then came the day that changed everything. I had gone grocery shopping, taking my time at the farmer's market, enjoying the simple pleasure of selecting fresh vegetables without worrying about Amanda's critical eyes. When I turned onto our street, I saw an unfamiliar moving truck in the driveway. My heart sank. Had they decided to leave without telling me? As I parked and approached the house, I saw Amanda directing the movers, who were carrying what looked like my dining room table toward the truck. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Amanda startled, clearly not expecting me back so soon. Kelsey, I thought you'd be gone all afternoon. Evidently. Why are movers taking my dining table? We're just making some space. For Sam's development, we found a nice storage facility. William appeared from inside the house. The apartment is all set at Golden Sunset. We thought you'd be happier there, away from all this tension. Amanda found a lovely place for your things. They had done it again. Despite the legal agreement, despite everything, they were still trying to move me out. Stop, I called to the movers. That table belongs to me, and I have not authorized its removal. The lead mover looked between me and Amanda uncertainly. She's confused, Amanda said quickly. She agreed to this move yesterday. I did no such thing, I said firmly. I am Kelsey Sanders, the owner of this house, and those are my possessions. I have documentation to prove it. I pulled out my phone and called Thomas. putting him on speaker so everyone could hear. "Thomas, they're trying to move my things out again. Without permission. Yes, there are movers here right now. Could you come immediately? And perhaps bring the sheriff's deputy you mentioned?" That got everyone's attention. The movers set down my table and stepped back. "Lady, we don't want any trouble," the lead mover said. "We were told this was an approved move." "It is not," I stated clearly, "and I can prove it." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "You're making a scene, Kelsey. The neighbors will hear." "Let them hear," I said, my voice rising. "Let the whole neighborhood know that you're trying to remove me from my own home against my will. Let them know you've been planning this for months. Let them know about the email where you plotted to have me declared incompetent." William tried to salvage the situation. "Now, Kelsey, there's no need for dramatics. We've found you a lovely apartment at Golden Sunset. They have activities, meals, everything you need." "What I need," I said, my voice trembling with anger, "is for you to respect me and my home. What I need is for my son to stand up for his mother, instead of allowing his wife to erase me from my own life." As if summoned by my words, Jake's car pulled into the driveway. He stared in confusion at the moving truck, then at the standoff on the front lawn. "What's happening?" he asked, climbing out of his car. "Your wife and her father are trying to remove my possessions without my permission, again." Despite our signed agreement, Jake looked at Amanda in disbelief. "Is this true?" "We're just trying to help," Amanda insisted. "Your mother would be happier in a place designed for seniors. This house is too much for her." "That's not your decision to make," Jake said, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in months. "We signed an agreement. We gave our word." "Jake, be reasonable," William interjected. "Your mother can't manage this big house anymore. Golden Sunset has security, activities." "My mother doesn't need managing," Jake interrupted. "She needs respect. In her own home." The shock on Amanda's face mirrored my own. For the first time since this ordeal began, Jake was taking a clear stand. "You knew about this?" he asked Amanda. "You planned this behind my back?" Amanda's confidence faltered. We thought it would be easier this way. Once it was done, my mother would have no choice," Jake finished for her. "Just like when you sold my dad's record collection without asking, or moved his recliner to the garage, or rearranged the kitchen my mother has used for 40 years. "Jake, you're overreacting," William tried again. "No, I'm finally reacting appropriately," Jake countered. "I've been silent too long while my mother was pushed aside in her own home. That ends today." He turned to the movers. "Please return everything to the house. This move is not authorized." The lead mover nodded, clearly relieved to have a clear direction. "Yes, sir. We'll put everything back exactly where we found it." Thomas arrived 15 minutes later, by which time the movers were already returning items to the house. Amanda and William had retreated inside, avoiding the neighbors' curious glances. After Thomas assessed the situation, he suggested we call a formal family meeting with legal representation present. "This can't continue," he said firmly. "The pattern of attempting to remove Mrs. Sanders from her home constitutes elder abuse, and if it happens again, I will have no choice but to involve Adult Protective Services and law enforcement." The threat of official involvement finally seemed to penetrate. Amanda's parents left the next day, their influence clearly diminished by the public confrontation. Jake spent that evening apologizing to me, his regret evident in every word. "I failed you, Mom," he admitted. "I was so caught up in trying to keep peace with Amanda that I let her steamroll over you, over everything that matters." "Why, Jake? You weren't raised to be passive in the face of injustice." He sighed heavily. "It started small, little compromises to make Amanda happy. Then they became bigger compromises. Then it just seemed easier to go along than to fight. But watching them try to move you out today, I suddenly saw everything clearly. What kind of son would I be if I let that happen? What kind of example would I be setting for Sam?" His words touched me deeply. "It's not too late to be the son I raised you to be, Jake. The son your father would be proud of." "I know. And I promise you, from this moment forward, I will stand up for what's right. Even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly in my own bed, in my own room, in my own home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But today, at least, I had reclaimed my place in the world. The days following the moving truck incident brought a significant shift in our household dynamics. Jake had finally found his voice and was using it to establish clear boundaries with Amanda. For her part, Amanda maintained a frosty distance, spending most of her time in the nursery with Sam. Thomas arranged a formal mediation session at his office, with all parties present. Amanda initially refused to attend, but Jake stood firm. "This affects all of us," he told her. "If we're going to live together until we find our own place, we need clear guidelines everyone agrees to follow." The mediation was tense but productive. Thomas brought in a family counselor to help navigate the complex emotions at play. We established written agreements about household responsibilities, personal space, and most importantly, my relationship with Sam. "I understand your protective instincts as a new mother," the counselor told Amanda. "But research shows children benefit enormously from relationships with loving grandparents. Those bonds provide additional security and a sense of family history." Amanda listened more receptively to the professional than she ever had to me. "I just don't want confusion about who's in charge of Sam's upbringing," she admitted. "That's a valid concern," the counselor acknowledged. "The key is communication and mutual respect. Kelsey has raised a child successfully. She has wisdom to share, but ultimately, you and Jake make the final decisions for Sam." For the first time, I saw a glimmer of understanding in Amanda's eyes. Perhaps her behavior hadn't been solely about claiming my house. Perhaps there was genuine insecurity beneath her controlling actions. As we left the mediation, Amanda surprised me by asking to speak privately. We sat in the courtyard outside Thomas's office. "I need to say something," she began stiffly. "I've been difficult. About the house. About Sam." I waited, not making it easier for her. "The truth is," she continued, her voice dropping, "I've never felt good enough. My mother always made everything look so easy. The perfect home, the perfect family. When I became pregnant, I panicked. I didn't know if I could be a good mother. Everyone feels that way with their first child," I said gently. "It doesn't mean you take over someone else's home." "I know. It was wrong." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "But then I saw how natural you were with Sam. How easily you could soothe him when I couldn't. How he would stop crying the minute you took him. And I felt like a failure." Her words caught me by surprise. "You were jealous? Of me? You made motherhood look effortless." "I'm exhausted and overwhelmed all the time. I started to worry that Sam would love you more than me." "Oh, Amanda." Despite everything, my heart softened slightly. "That's not how love works. Sam has plenty for both of us. And motherhood has never been effortless for anyone. You're only seeing me with my second baby." I was a nervous wreck with Jake. "Really?" I called my mother crying at least twice a week. I was convinced I was doing everything wrong. It takes time to find your confidence as a mother. For the first time, I saw Amanda without her protective armor of perfectionism and control. She was just a frightened new mother, terrified of falling short. "This doesn't excuse what you tried to do," I added firmly. "Trying to push me out of my home was wrong, regardless of your insecurities." "I know," she admitted. "I got caught up in this idea that if we had the house to ourselves, everything would be perfect. That I could finally feel like I was in control of something. We weren't going to resolve years of insecurity and months of conflict in one conversation, but it was a start, a crack in the wall between us. Back at home, we began implementing the agreements from mediation. Jake took responsibility for communicating between Amanda and me, ensuring neither of us felt blindsided by household decisions. I was careful to ask before offering parenting advice, respecting their authority as Sam's parents. Amanda gradually allowed me more time with Sam without hovering nervously. The most significant change was in Jake. Having finally stood up for what was right, he seemed to grow stronger each day. He no longer avoided conflict at all costs, but learned to address problems directly and respectfully. "I'm proud of you," I told him one evening as we sat on the porch swing. "Your father would be too. I should have done it sooner," he said regretfully. "I let things go too far. The important thing is that you found your courage when it truly mattered." 3 months after the mediation, Jake and Amanda found a small house in a nearby neighborhood. The timing aligned with the 6-month timeline we'd agreed upon, and the proximity meant I could remain part of Sam's daily life. "It needs work," Jake admitted when they showed me photos. "But the price is right, and it's only 10 minutes from here. Close enough for regular visits, but far enough for everyone's independence," I noted. "Sounds perfect." Moving day came with mixed emotions. Part of me was thrilled to reclaim my home completely. Another part would miss the daily joy of seeing Sam, even amid the tension with his parents. As they packed the last boxes into their moving truck, I held Sam, now a sturdy 1-year-old with Jake's curious eyes. "Grandma's going to visit you all the time," I promised him. "And you'll come stay with me sometimes too." Amanda approached, her demeanor softer than I'd ever seen it. "We were thinking maybe once a week? Sunday dinners here? And maybe you could watch him occasionally when we both have work commitments?" "I'd like that very much," I said sincerely. After they left, the house felt strangely empty. I wandered through the rooms, appreciating the return of peace but missing the chaos of family life. I understood why many empty nesters struggled with the silence. Over the following months, our family found a new equilibrium. Sunday dinners became a pleasant tradition rather than a battlefield. Jake and Amanda gradually settled into their new home, and I helped where I could without overstepping. The most surprising development was my relationship with Amanda. Once she no longer felt threatened by me, once she gained confidence in her own mothering abilities, her defensiveness slowly melted away. We would never be best friends, but we developed a mutual respect that made family gatherings comfortable rather than tense. 6 months after they moved out, they invited me to Sam's 2nd birthday celebration at their new home. The small house had been transformed by their efforts, painted and repaired with obvious care. "You've done wonders with this place," I told Jake as he gave me a tour. "We've worked hard," he said proudly. "It's not as spacious as your house, but it's ours." During the party, I noticed Frank's old recliner in their living room, restored and reupholstered in a fabric that matched their decor. "We found it in your garage," Amanda explained when she saw me looking at it. "Jake told me how much it meant to you," to his dad. "We thought it should be part of our home too, so Sam can hear stories about his grandfather." The gesture touched me deeply. It wasn't just about the chair, it was acknowledgement of Frank's place in our family history. The beginning of Amanda accepting that the past didn't threaten her place in the present. That evening, after the party, I sat in my quiet house reflecting on the tumultuous journey of the past 2 years. From grief to conflict, to this new, imperfect but hopeful family balance. The house no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful, filled with memories of the past and possibilities for the future. I had fought for my place in the world and won not just legal rights but newfound respect. A few weeks later, I had Sam for the afternoon, while Jake and Amanda attended a wedding. We played in the garden, read his favorite books, and eventually settled in the living room for a quiet moment before his parents returned. "Tell me about Grandpa," Sam requested, his small hand patting my cheek. "Grandpa Frank was tall and kind," I began, settling him more comfortably in my lap. "He could fix anything broken, and he told the silliest jokes. He would have loved you so much." As I shared stories of Frank with our grandson, I realized the profound lesson this journey had taught me. When we allow ourselves to be erased, we don't just lose our own place in the world, we lose the connections that bind generations together. The stories, the memories, the sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves. By fighting for my right to remain in my own home, I had preserved not just my present comfort but Sam's connection to his family history. The hard boundaries I'd been forced to establish had ultimately created the foundation for healthier relationships for all of us. Sometimes love means standing firm. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for others is to refuse to disappear. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against people you love? How did you balance setting boundaries with maintaining relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your place in the world.